The following program was produced by WDIV, a post-Newsweek station, and is designed for viewing by children ages 8 to 12. All post-Newsweek children's program policies and special commercial policies apply to its presentation. Today on Kidbits, we'll learn about music.
Music is communication, and you can make music on almost anything you could find around the house.
And on our second feature,
how does sound travel through the air from your television to your ear? Can you see sound? Can you feel sound? Just what is sound?
Next we have...
why do sounds sound so different? Why does a tuba sound so much different than a trumpet, for instance? Or why do thunder and a bass drum sound almost alike?
Then...
have you ever watched a symphonic orchestra playing a great piece of music and imagined yourself as one of the players? What instrument did you think that you were the master of?
And on the last Kidbits feature...
what's the difference between sound, noise, and music? Think about what these three words mean.
Kidbits will return after these messages. We now return to Kidbits.
Hello, and welcome to Kidbits. Do you enjoy music? Well, almost everyone has some type of music that they enjoy, from songs about cowboys on the radio to great symphonies played by orchestras of 100 members. Music has been an important part of all the civilizations on the earth, from the ancient Greeks to modern-day man. People have used music to communicate emotions, emotions like stirring patriotism, to quiet contemplation. Have you ever tried to make your own music? Well, sure you have. Even if you've never played a musical instrument, I'm sure you must have sung a few notes here and there, like, happy birthday to you, and that's making music. The earliest known musical instrument was and is the human body, either singing or whistling or even drumming on parts of it. Part of music's appeal is repeating or rehearing a favorite phrase. Music is communication, and you can make music on almost anything you could find around the house. And we can make an actual musical instrument, too, the xylophone. A xylophone is a percussion instrument with specific fixed pitches. We need 7 or 8 empty pop bottles, some water, a wooden dowel, and 2 wooden beads. In order for our xylophone to work properly, it's important that the bottles be the same kind or the same size. This is so that they produce nearly equal quality of sound. So our xylophone is in tune, you could say. We could use identical water glasses, too, but we'd have to be very, very careful. Pop bottles are a little thicker glass, and they're a lot more fun, too. Let's make our xylophone. The musical scale has 7 major notes. You've heard their names before: do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, and ti. Our xylophone will have the same 7 notes. The first and lowest note will be an empty bottle on my far left. That's the note do. The next note will need about 3/4 or an inch or so of water in the bottle to change the sound of it. This will be the note re. Each succeeding note will have a little bit more water in it than the one before it. Keep on filling your bottles and testing the notes as you go until you've made a new musical scale. This one goes the number 2 place. There, if you have 8 bottles, the last one will be 1 exact octave above the other one. The reason that the tone changes inside these bottles is that the sound is created by the vibration of the air inside the bottle. As we add more and more water, there is less and less air to vibrate. Thus, it has a higher note. This is the same reason a violin has a higher pitched sound than a cello. It's the size of the echo chamber. Our xylophone is just about ready to play. We'll be back right after this to invent some nifty mallets to play it with. Don't go away. Our all 8 notes are all set, and we need an easier way to play them than to pick them up and blow into them. A xylophone is normally a percussion instrument, which means that the sound is produced by hitting or striking the instrument to make the air inside vibrate. Let's make a pair of mallets. Now, you could use anything you could find around the house for mallets. Say a pair of spoons would work, or even a pair of pencils would work. Or we can make a really nice set of mallets out of 2 wooden beads and a wooden dowel. Cut 2 10-inch pieces of the doweling off and glue them into the holes in the beads. In this case, I have a couple drawer knobs here which have some holes in them, and I'm going to glue this knob right onto this stick. And when you're done, if you let them dry overnight, you'll have a great pair of mallets to play your xylophone with. Let's play a little song on our xylophone and see what we have here. My apologies to any friends I might have that were musicians. A pop bottle xylophone is just one type of xylophone that you can make. You can make one out of different lengths, blocks of wood, or of different lengths of pipe. If you do that, suspend them by the strings over an empty space so that there's nothing to interfere with the vibration of the sound. Experiment a bit. Try different things. Can you hear my voice? I hope you can. And if there's nothing wrong with your TV set, you should be able to hear it. How? How does sound travel through the air from your television to your ear? Can you see sound? Can you feel sound? Just what is sound? That's the main question. And the answer is that sound is a compressional wave effect. Now, this was first noted by the famed Greek philosopher Aristotle, who lived during the 3rd century BC. You know what a wave effect is if you've ever seen a picture of a lake or a pond or ever been to one, and most people have. The waves on the surface of the body of water behave much the same way as sound waves do. Whatever produces the sound vibrates the air molecules immediately next to it. These molecules bump into the ones next to them, and the energy transfers itself along a line of molecules, and so on, outward from the source. Here's a graphic example of a waveform. If I apply some energy to this rope, the energy moves along the rope without the molecules of the rope actually moving out of place. All sound moves in the same kind of a pattern. This includes musical instruments, too. From the noise of a jet plane to the noise of your voice, it all moves through the air just like this. There are all sorts of different kinds of musical instruments, and what's different about instruments is the manner in which they produce the sound. There are percussion instruments, string instruments, and wind instruments too, like the clarinet, trumpet, and oboe. All wind instruments create a sound by a rush of air passing over a vibrating surface, such as a reed. This is a clarinet mouthpiece right here. We can make our own woodwind instrument, the straw oboe, complete with a vibrating reed out of a drinking straw. Either paper or plastic straws will work, and they produce slightly different tones. Take either kind of a straw and flatten the end of it. Now, a paper straw will flatten right in your fingers, but a plastic straw, you'll have to put on a table or a desk and flatten it with a ruler or maybe even the end of a spoon or something like that. Once you get it flattened out, take a pair of scissors and take the very corners of the straw off, just like that. You're sort of dog-earing the corner of the straw. And that's all there is to it. Put the reed end into your mouth and sound is made. As it is now, our oboe will only produce one sound or tone. But you can change the tone of it by clipping the end off as you play it like this. Be careful of your nose, though. Oops, that one got a little too high on me. Here are 3 straws taped together, and the tone is going to be different for this one, too. Let's listen to this. The tone is different whether the straw is longer or shorter because each time we're changing the size of the vibrating column of air inside the straw. Now, you could experiment by making small holes in the front of one of your straw oboes and covering or uncovering the holes with your fingers to change the tone. Now that you're an accomplished oboist, in 30 seconds we'll make another fun musical instrument. Hurry back. Our oboe produced its sound by an air stream passing over a vibrating pair of reeds. We changed the tone by changing the size of the sound chamber, either longer or shorter. Our next instrument, the kazoo, works on a similar sort of principle. And all you'll need is a cardboard tube, some wax paper, and a couple of rubber bands. The sound comes from air rushing past a set of cords that vibrate in the air, and you control the sound by changing the size and shape of the echo chamber. If that sounds difficult, don't worry. What I've just described is your voice. The sound of a kazoo is produced by your own vocal cords and lungs. The kazoo itself is just an echo chamber that changes the sound a bit to make it a bit more fun. Here's all you have to do. Cover one end of a cardboard tube with some wax paper and put a rubber band around it to hold it securely in place. Take a pencil and poke a hole in it, and that's all there is to it. You're ready to play. Think up a nice, easy tune to start with, and start humming. There you go. Why do sounds sound so different? Why does a tuba sound so much different than a trumpet, for instance? Or why do thunder and a bass drum sound almost alike? Well, we can answer all these questions and make our own version of a trumpet today with these simple items: a shower hose or similar flexible tube, a small plastic funnel, and perhaps a ruler and string. Let's explore the basic quality of sound. Sounds sound different because each sound travels at a different frequency. The word frequency means the amount of time something happens within a specific interval or length of time. Sound waves are measured in vibrations per second, or hertz. The human ear can hear vibrations between 20 hertz, or 20 vibrations per second, up to 20,000 hertz. The name Hertz is the name of a German physicist who named this phenomenon, although the ancient Greek mathematician Pythagoras in the 6th century BC was the first person to notate the relationship between pitch and the number of vibrations produced. Here's a tuning fork that vibrates at 64 hertz. If you were able to count that fast, you could count 64 back and forth movements of these metal bars for each second. Here's another tuning fork that vibrates at a much higher and much faster speed. Listen. This fork is moving at 440 vibrations per second. The tuning forks are very precise and will always vibrate at the same speed. But how about a non-musical sound like thunder? How many hertz does thunder produce? Well, there is no one set number. Thunder is a randomly produced sound made up of a great many other sounds, each at a different rate of vibrations. A bass drum is very similar to thunder. It produces a combination of sound that together sound like a very low rumble. That's a very important difference between music and sound. Music is the creation of very specific tones that are controlled by the person playing the music. Sound is a random collection of vibrations in the air around us, produced by all sorts of sources. In order to make music instead of sound, we need to be in control. A trumpet player controls the speed at which his lips vibrate. If you've got your shower hose and funnel ready, we'll create our own trumpet right after this message. If you couldn't find a shower hose handy, any kind of flexible tube will work, maybe even your garden hose. The tube of itself is the body of our instrument. The vibrations in the air travel around inside the tube, bouncing off the walls of the tube until the sound comes out the other end. This funnel here will act as the mouthpiece of our trumpet, so to speak. This is the place where we vibrate the air to make the sound. Now, you should be able to make an airtight seal inside your funnel with your lips and cheeks. Now, if your funnel's too big, you may ask one of the adults in your house to help you cut it down a little bit till it's a little bit smaller, like this one here. A trumpet player vibrates the air like this. And he fits the funnel into the hose like this, makes that same sound into here, and try a few different things and see if you can get the sound to change. Can you control it? How many different sounds can you produce? Or could you play a tune? You are creating music because you do have control over the sound you're producing. Or you could have control if you keep practicing. I found an old bugle mouthpiece here too, which will work much better than our funnel even for making the sound. Let's see what kind of sound this makes. Have you ever watched a symphonic orchestra playing a great piece of music and imagined yourself as one of the players? What instrument did you think that you were the master of? Perhaps you already know how to play an instrument, a piano or a guitar or the drums. If so, do you know exactly how your instrument produces its sound? Have you ever looked closely at it, at the mechanics of it? On this program, we're going to take a look at two families of musical instruments, the woodwinds and the brass. Both of these families are aerophones. That is, they produce their sound by reacting to a changing column of air. The simplest member of the woodwind family is the recorder. A mouthpiece is similar to that of a whistle in that there is no moving or vibrating reed, just a narrow slot that the air is blown through. You change the sound by changing the length of the column of air by closing or opening these holes. Recorders come in several sizes, soprano, alto, and bass, and they all have a very sweet, smooth sound and are considered easy to play. A flute is a woodwind instrument, even though it's made of metal rather than wood. To play the flute, you blow across this opening here, and a bit of the air goes inside the horn to vibrate the air inside. Again, the different tones are produced by covering up these keys. A flute is quite a bit more complex than a recorder and takes a little more time to learn how to play. A piccolo, on the other hand, is a smaller, higher-pitched version of a flute. Smaller means that there's less air inside, and consequently has a higher tone. The next member of the woodwind family is the clarinet. The sound of the clarinet is produced by a vibrating reed. As you blow air into the clarinet, the stream of air vibrates the reed, which vibrates the air inside the horn. Again, the keys and holes control the tone. Clarinets come in 4 sizes: E flat, B flat, alto, and bass. The next member is one of the newest instruments in the world. The saxophone was invented by Adolph Sax in 1846. It's very similar to a clarinet. It has the same kind of reed system, but the metal body gives it a whole different tone quality. Saxes come in 4 sizes: soprano, this is an alto, a tenor saxophone is a little bit larger than an alto, and a baritone saxophone is larger than that yet. Well, that's a quick look at the woodwind family, although we left out a couple of the very beautiful and very difficult to play double reed instruments, the oboe and English horn and the bassoon. Hurry back after this, and we'll take a look at the brass family. All brass instruments work by reacting to a vibrating column of air produced by the musician's lip. They all have a mouthpiece, much like this one here, which the musician uses to make a sound like this. The difference between the various brass instruments is in the size and the method of routing the air through them. The simplest brass instrument is the bugle, which has no valves on it. The notes are changed by the bugler varying the pressure and speed of the air he blows into the horn. Now, if you take a bugle and add 3 valves to it and a bit more tubing, you've created a trumpet or a cornet. Here you have greater control over the sound you're producing because you can change the distance the air must travel before it reaches the bell of the trumpet. A trumpet has a very bright sound. A very complex and beautiful version of a valve trumpet is a French horn. There's a lot more brass tubing here, and the mouthpiece is narrower and deeper. The French horn's sound is mellower and deeper as well. Other valved brass instruments include the flugelhorn, alto horn, baritone horn, and the tuba. The tuba is the largest and lowest and takes the most air to operate, but it too is capable of making pleasant music. Another member of the brass family that has its own unique system for changing sound is the slide trombone. You change the sound of the tone by literally making the instrument longer or shorter. The woodwinds and the brass, 2 important historic families of instruments. What's the difference between sound, noise, and music? Think about what these 3 words mean. Are noise and music sound? Can music be noise? Could noise be music? How many different ways can you think of to make sound? And are any of these forms of music? On this segment, we're going to take a look at 2 very different families of musical instruments, the string family and the percussion family. Strings are unquestionably involved with the production of music. Their soft singing sound has often been compared to the human voice. All string instruments are chordophones. That is, they produce their sound by vibrating chords or strings and are capable of producing more than 1 tone at a time. Many of them have an echo box underneath the sounds to resonate and amplify the sound. Probably the earliest string instrument was the lyre, a simple wooden frame with a number of strings stretched across it. The Roman Emperor Nero may have played a lyre as Rome burned. The modern version of the lyre is a harp, a rare and beautiful instrument. The wooden harp has 46 strings and a pedal arrangement to adjust the pitch of the strings according to which key the music is in. The next oldest string instrument is the guitar. The earliest version of the guitar was developed in the Middle East around 1000 BC. Many versions of lutes, mandolins, and guitars have been created by various cultures around the world since then. The modern Spanish guitar, of which this is an example, was created around the year 1500 by a Spanish craftsman named Vicente Espinel. A Spanish guitar has 6 strings, which may be played individually or played as a chord. The violin, however, is probably the most widely recognized member of the string family. A violin has 4 strings, which are normally bowed to produce the sound. The neck has no frets and markings on it to indicate some notes, as a guitar did, and consequently it takes more time to master the violin. Larger versions of the violin are the cello, which is quite a bit larger, the viola a little bit larger, and finally the bass violin, the biggest string instrument of all, the foundation of the modern orchestra. The string family of music makers, each with its own special sound. We'll take a look at some noise makers that are music makers too, right after this. An important bridge between the string instruments and the percussion instruments is the piano. Here's a very versatile instrument with 230 steel strings arranged into 88 notes. The strings are played by a felt hammer which strikes the strings when you press a key. The hammers are what makes the piano a percussion instrument. The word percussion comes from the Latin word percutere, which means to strike hard. The piano can play single notes or great ringing chords of 8 or 10 notes. Many of you may get the chance to take piano lessons sometime, and even if the practicing doesn't seem to be much fun, if you stick to it, the piano will provide you with lots of enjoyment throughout life. Many people think the rest of the percussion family is just drums. Well, drums are a very important part of the family, but not the only family. Drums are membranophones. That is, they produce their sound by reacting to a stretched, vibrating membrane. When you strike a snare drum or a bongo or even a timpani, the surface you strike against pushes the air on the other side, and that makes the sound. By using a pair of wooden drumsticks, you can make a series of rapid sounds called a drum roll on a snare drum. Another kind of percussion instruments are the idiophones. Idiophones make their music by vibrating the entire body of the instrument. Here are some examples of idiophones: the triangle, the maraca, the cymbal. They're a little bit more musical than random drums because they produce a specific tone rather than a random tone. A modern percussionist with a symphony orchestra could be called upon to play any or all of these instruments. He must have an excellent sense of rhythm and good coordination. Other percussion instruments include the tambourine, the woodblock, and even the washboard, which has its own unique sound. String and percussion instruments, two very different families of instruments with a common member, the piano.
Kidbits will return after these messages. We now return to Kidbits. Experiments seen on this program were developed in conjunction with the Detroit Science Center, where the excitement of science is seen daily. On our next Kidbits show, we'll learn about optical illusions.
Have you ever seen something that wasn't really there? Have you ever watched a magician who, right before your very eyes, made something appear out of nowhere?
And on our second feature...
Have you ever heard the saying that the hand is quicker than the eye? What do you think that means? Could your hand move fast enough to fool your eye?
Then...
Do you really see what you think you see? Could there really be stairs like this anywhere in the world? What kind of picture is this? The answer is that this picture is an illusion.
Next, we have...
When was the last time that you saw a really good moonrise? No, not a sunrise, but a moonrise. Well, the information for it is listed in the paper every day.
And on the last Kidbits feature...
Here is a drawing for you to examine. Do you see two gray triangles in this picture, one on top of the other?
See you next week.